caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president, they attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. Listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never said that.
For 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky. January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Mr. Kennedy, the original question, if anyone remembers it, it was a good one. You say you want to negotiate with Putin. What if Putin says, just let us keep the territory we have, and don't have Ukraine join NATO?
That is Putin's, right now, his opening bargaining position. Putin has been asking to settle this war from the beginning. In fact, he agreed to 2 separate treaties, the Minsk Accords, in 2019, which Zelensky ran in 2019 and ran promising to sign the Minsk Accords. And really the only thing Putin wanted was to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. He then, in 2022, right after he first invaded with only 40,000 troops, when President Biden said there is absolute baloney, President Putin did not go into Ukraine intending to conquer Europe. He only sent 40,000 troops. It's a nation of 44 million people. He didn't even want to take Ukraine. He wanted us back at the negotiating table. Zelensky asked the United States to help him negotiate a treaty with Putin. And Biden administration said no. Zelensky then went and asked Israel, and Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister, said yes, and Erdogan in Turkey said yes, and they negotiated a beautiful treaty in Istanbul in April of 2022. They signed the treaty. The one thing that Putin wanted was that we didn't put NATO in Ukraine. He didn't want to conquer Europe. And they signed it. Putin was withdrawing his troops, leaving Donbass and Lugansk. And what happened? President Joe Biden sent Boris Johnson over to Kiev and forced Zelensky to tear up that agreement because they had another agenda, which is to weaken Russia. President Trump was part of it. President Trump gave the first $1.3 billion to Ukraine in 2017 of the first offensive weapons. He then sent Mike Pompeo over there in 2019 to say that we're going to put NATO there. So, and then he walked away from the intermediate range nuclear treaty with Russia unilaterally. We had a nuclear weapons treaty that we wouldn't put intermediate missiles in Ukraine or the other former Soviet satellite states. And President Trump walked away from it. So the two of them are equally culpable in the provocations that led to this war. And I'm not excusing Putin. Putin didn't need to go into Ukraine. And he should be held responsible too. But we need to look at our responsibility, and it falls both on the backs of President Trump and President Biden.